Brilliant. If anyone's got any questions throughout, there is obviously the chat function, or you can raise your hand using the icon at the top. There will be time for questions at the end if anyone has any, but obviously if there's anything urgent that comes up, then obviously let us know. If you do want to switch your camera on to ask questions, that's fine. As I say, we ask people to switch them off purely because it's better from a bandwidth point of view and a user experience. So this webinar came up because of the current energy crisis. There are obviously a huge amount of stories in the news, some scaremongering, but obviously with quite a lot of truth behind it. We then got in touch with Control Energy Costs, and I'm delighted to say that Liam, who knows far more about this, is going to be guiding us through it today. So I will disappear and be quiet and hand you over to Liam now to talk you through. So Liam, over to you.
Thanks, James. That's great. I'm just going to screen share. Okay, so I guess just a little bit of background, really. So Control Energy Costs are a 41-year-old firm advising clients across electricity, gas and water. We have around now 700 clients across the UK, and broadly 60-ish% of those are in the manufacturing sector. I'm heavily involved in a number of organisations, Made in the Midlands, Made in Yorkshire, Confederation of British Metal Forming, Surface Engineering Association, people like that who we partner with to help their members understand what's going on. We've run lots of these webinars, so I hope it's a smooth experience for you. I hope my webinar is well practiced now. As James said, if there's any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. There is a Q&A at the end, and we'll get into it. Okay, so the topics to cover. So understanding your energy contract options. We're going to explore a flexible purchasing framework. If your contracts are due in 2022 and you haven't contracted, what are you going to do? What's the plan? That is definitely, priority one for lots of people. And I'll also just very briefly cover some of the points that people probably need to be aware of in the murky world of energy brokerage. Okay, so what I wanted to do first and foremost is share two examples with you to set your expectations about what's going on in the market. So if you haven't looked at energy contracts, you aren't aware of it, this paints a fairly bleak picture, really. This is a fairly typical client. So most of our clients spend somewhere between sort of £100,000 a year and £30 million a year. The spread is quite large. We don't really do many fixed contracts now, so I didn't have many examples to show you, but I thought this was a really, really powerful one. So this is for a business who currently their ex-VAT costs for electricity are £166,000 a year. Now, on the 20th of July, when this fixed tender was put together, their forecast annual cost for a 12-month period was £618,000 on a 12-month contract. Now that increase is 270% over their current costs, but that isn't the full story. The full story is they did nothing, and 2 weeks later went out and we got another fixed prices for them because they want fixed price contracts. And that 12-month cost in 2 weeks had gone up from £618,000 to £784,000. Now, this particular client still have done nothing about it. It is very fair to say that the MD of that business is absolutely burying his head in the sand for a 1st of October renewal date. Their cost now will be probably somewhere £850,000 per annum. So the severity of the increase is significant, and the pace at which fixed contracts are moving is absolutely unprecedented. This is the same client for gas. They don't really use gas, it's just a very small heating load. But look at the percentage increases there. I hope the screen's big enough so you can make it out. They're going from just under £27,000 a year to, on a 12-month contract, £172,000 a year, 539% increase. Again, same scenario, 2 weeks later, that 172 is now 195. So that's the business where they don't use any gas in production. That is just simply a heating load, where they were paying broadly an average of just over £2,000 a month, which really was not a business consideration to them at all, to now well over £200,000 as of today. And I wanted to put that in there just because I think that sets the tone of the severity of the market and the challenges that we are facing. Okay, so understanding energy contract options. So let's touch on fully fixed contracts, which most businesses probably purchase within a fully fixed contract. Certainly people who use less than 10 million kilowatts of electricity or gas a year. What is a fixed contract? A fixed contract is where you fix both the commodity and the non-commodity costs for a fixed period of time, typically 1, 2, or 3 years. Commodity costs, just for clarity, are the wholesale costs of electricity and gas, and the non-commodity costs are things like distribution costs, transmission costs, taxes, levies, all that kind of stuff. The supplier adds those together, smooths it out over a period of time, adds in some risk, or as they might like to call it from their point of view, some additional margin to cover themselves, and they give you a fixed price for a fixed period of time. It takes the forward curve, so that is if you're contracting today on a fixed contract, it's today's curve, and let's say your contract is due to start in October. It is a snapshot of today's the curve from October today, and they're also estimating those non-commodity costs, and that gives them another opportunity to build in more risk and more margin. Opting for this option now would essentially be locking in forward volume at market highs. By market highs, it is I think it's important just to say the market has never been higher than it is now. So our view is that signing a fixed contract where you are taking those forward months and those forward years at the highest the market has ever been really is not a sensible decision. There is huge risk being built in by the market and suppliers, resulting in astronomically high unit rates. In short, everything and anything is being baked into wholesale costs at the minute. Risk of World War III, lights out, no gas supply, Putin doing something even more extreme than he's already done. Now, if those things don't come to fruition, you'd expect the market to drop. If you go into a fixed contract, you are not going to get the benefit of that. And our view is that that approach is broken. And in some cases, for businesses, it is commercial suicide to contract in this way. I was just saying to James before you all joined the call, we will undoubtedly have businesses who will not survive this winter. They will not be trading come next year, given the severity of energy increases to them. If you are currently being presented, and by presented I mean by a broker, advisor, consultant, with this traditional approach of just fully fixed contracts, then I'd perhaps suggest whoever you're taking advice from is not giving you a full, fair and comprehensive view of all of your options for whatever reason. And that may be because they're not in the market for flexible contracts, or it is seen as an easier way to get contracts done by doing fully fixed contracts. So the alternative, and we will talk about this more as we move through the call, the alternative is a flexible framework. I think there might be some other people out there now in the lobby.
Sorry, Liam, you've just been muted.
That better?
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. So I'll start from the top. So the decisions within a flexible framework, the decisions to purchase the commodity element, which is the cost of electricity and gas, the wholesale costs, are made over time, and therefore you don't have to commit all of your volume on one given day like you have to do for fixed contracts. The ability to make multiple purchases over time, taking into consideration market conditions, budget and risk. A flexible framework also allows you the ability to not purchase, and by not purchase we mean take advantage of the day ahead market, which has proven a very powerful tactic of late. And again, I'll come on to that in more detail as we move through this. For those who are waiting to make a decision because they think it will go down, a flexible framework would allow you to take advantage of that, given not all forward months and seasons are moving unilaterally. So I fully understand that people have not made decisions. I understand that from a business perspective. What's happening though is if you're waiting thinking it's going to go down, I think we are of the opinion that the market at some point will have to go down. This is not sustainable. But what's happening is we're not seeing forward months and seasons move unilaterally. So the front end of a contract might move, the back end might not, but you're not getting the benefit of that within a flexible framework because it's just a weighted average that a supplier applies within a fixed contract. A flexible framework allows you the ability to be far more strategic and targeted with your purchases. I'll just stop screen sharing just so I can get a sense, if I may. If you could just raise your hands just by at the top. There's a tab called reactions and raise your hand. Does anybody currently purchase via a flexible framework? So I can get a sense of. Okay. Nobody's raised their hand, so I'll assume that you're all purchasing via fixed contracts. Okay. So exploring a flexible purchasing framework, I've subtitled that the strategic way to manage your costs, which it definitely is. So large clients have predominantly managed energy contracts in this way for a long time. A large client to us and suppliers is anybody who uses 10 gig, which is 10 million kilowatts of electricity or gas per annum. In 2018, we created the collective basket to give clients under that 10 gig threshold the opportunity to access a flexible purchasing framework and the wholesale market. Unless there's a very strong reason to opt for fixed pricing, we are advising all clients to move to this approach and have a fully managed solution. So just on this point around a collective, a basket, you might hear it referred to as a consortium. In essence, it allows people who use less than 10 million kilowatts of electricity or gas per annum the ability to purchase like a large user would by collectively coming together and purchasing under one effectively super user. I'll walk you through a purchasing illustration, and I hope this might help. So I'm just going to use some arbitrary dates here. So let's say a flex contract is signed today for a contract to start the 1st of October, and currently within the electricity framework, you can go out until the end of March 26, and gas is out until September 26. So that's your contract period, and you sign a contract today, hypothetically. Within that, each bar represents 1 month within that contract period. And depending on market conditions, we have the ability to purchase chunks or clips over time. That could be 10, 20, 50%. I'll run you through a very, very simple representation of that. we have the ability, given the volume that we manage within this product, in theory, to make thousands of purchases. I have done this down significantly, just so I hope it makes it simple for people to understand. So you could have a first purchase here, a second purchase, a third purchase, and a fourth purchase. So we can buy chunks over time, either when we deem the market appropriate to do so, and that could be because it looks attractive to do so from a wholesale cost point of view, or we may want to take more of a, call it a defensive position, where we're building a hedged position so that you're not 100% exposed to the market at any point. This now represents one single month. Now, this example is going to show you 3 purchases and what that would mean in terms of the price that you would see on your invoice for that period. So in this example, we have first purchase, which is 20% of volume required at £100 per megawatt. That is effectively 10p. A second purchase at 60% of volume at £70 per megawatt, and a final purchase at 20% of volume at £60 per megawatt. What do you actually see on your invoice? Well, you see a weighted average purchase price of £74 per megawatt. And the invoice comes to you in exactly the same way that your current invoices do, month in arrears. So even if we went and purchased, for example, 2 years worth of energy, you're not having to pay for that upfront. You still pay it in exactly the same way once you've used the energy month by month. This is, in my opinion, the critical bit. So I'm just going to stop screen sharing again. If I could, again, just so I can get a sense of where people are at within the call, could I just ask you to either probably best if you go to reactions and raise your hands. How many of you have open contracts due between now and the end of the year where you haven't contracted? Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. That's helpful. I will I hope this is of use to you. It's definitely been of use to the other organisations that we've delivered this to. I'm more than happy to answer questions, probably at the Q&A at the end, and we can always catch up afterwards. I'm more than happy to do that. So let's get into it. So contracts due in 22. What's the plan? What are you going to do? I suspect that a fair proportion of you who raised your hand there have contracts due on the 1st of October. So look, there are no easy answers to any of this. There's no magic wand. All I would say at this point is, please don't bury your head in the sand, because this is getting worse, not better. And the 2 points that I'm going to come on to might give you more of an understanding of some of the challenges that are in the market as things stand. So the 1st of October is the most common contract end date across the UK portfolio. It is always a nightmare running between August and September up to October, because people leave it till last minute. We've got summer holidays, all the usual stuff. That is just magnified probably 100-fold at the minute. Suppliers, and indeed us, are already indicating an unprecedented level of business still to contract with open volume. Suppliers have not got capacity to tender and continually re-tender fixed contracts. What do I mean by that? You're not going to be in a position where you can get a fixed price today, don't sign it, get a fixed price tomorrow, don't sign it, get a couple of fixed prices next week, don't sign it. Suppliers will be as blunt as just cutting you out of that picture, given that there is so much to do. Equally, getting tenders turned around on a flexible basis are challenging, just because the workload is just completely unprecedented. The other thing that people need to be very aware of is issues around credit assessments. Now, previously, credit assessments for energy contracts hadn't been a big issue. There were some challenges around COVID, but it is now a huge issue. So what we're seeing, basically, because of the contract value to a supplier is now significantly larger, they are struggling to get credit insurance to underwrite the contracts if they can't underwrite it themselves. We're still seeing sectors, there are some suppliers who are not taking anything from automotive and aerospace, just carte blanche. That's their policy, regardless of if it's an A-rated business or not. It's crazy. So just to set some expectations, what suppliers may be asking for are draft accounts or Q1, Q2 management accounts to support the credit decision. But given that we realistically have 6 weeks maximum, I'd say, to get contracts sorted for the 1st of October, some supplier turnarounds are 3+ weeks already. If then a credit decision prolongs that and you haven't got that information ready, it will just prolong it even further and make it more challenging. So with all this in mind, we firmly believe that clients and businesses should be exploring and moving to a flexible framework for renewals during 2022. Our current strategy is to not purchase, as this will prove cost effective, and I'm going to talk to you about that now. But I cannot stress strongly enough to everybody that I cannot remember the last time that a business signed a fixed contract. I think, as I said earlier, I think in lots of cases it's business suicide to do so. So let's look at some trend graphs to sort of validate that, really. So this is from 2018 to present. So on the left, all those lines look relatively flat now until we get to the right, where you see those huge spikes. At the start, on the left there were a few spikes in 2018. That was the beast from the east, where people were panicking and losing their minds about energy costs. I mean, that now looks like a complete drop in the ocean. In the middle, you'll see a sort of wiggly orange line, which was summer 20, which was COVID, when we had demand destruction, markets fell off. But broadly, looking back now at that looks flat. You come to the right and it just looks bonkers. What we've seen is severe spikes, massive intraday movement, and again, from a fixed contract point of view, historically, it didn't really matter if you did it 1 week. You didn't sign a contract 1 week. Next week, prices are going to loosely be broadly the same. Now, you're not far off. You could be doubling on a spike, and we are now firmly at the top of a spike. So again, why would you want to be committing volume over a long period of time at the top of a spike? Granted, we don't know how high that might go further past that, but all of the evidence for us would suggest that this is definitely a spike and not to fix against. Very similar message for the electricity market. Okay, so what's the strategy? So within a flexible contract, you can access the day-ahead market. This is not the same, just for absolute clarity, this is not the same as going out of contract onto supplier deemed rates. You can only access the day-ahead market via a flexible framework. And if you're under that 10 million kilowatts of electricity or gas per annum, you can only access that via a collective strategy, which we talked about earlier. So the day ahead price, what is that? That is today's price for tomorrow's delivery of electricity or gas. So again, if we take the example, you have a 1st of October contract start date, it will be the day ahead price on the last day of September for October's delivery, and then similarly October the 1st day ahead price for October the 2nd, and so it rolls on. Now, in the short term, that is our strategy, to be purchasing via the day ahead market, because that has proven cheaper than the last lock point of the month before. So it's proven cheaper than a fixed contract signing it the month before. The only month that was not true was March 22, when the invasion happened. And actually, if you look at the spread between the two bars there, so the blue being the last fixed date that you could sign a fixed contract and fix it in, and then taking the day ahead market being the orange bar, all months are lower apart from March. And the rationale behind that really is, again, what I said earlier, you know, there's so much risk baked into those future prices that you know, we know more today about tomorrow's delivery, so therefore the risk drops, and therefore the wholesale cost drops. This is not a long-term strategy to be purchasing, you know, forever within a day ahead market, but it is certainly the only way that gives businesses a fighting chance at the minute of reducing costs, certainly going into winter, which is the period from October to the end of March, because those wholesale costs now look beyond eye-watering. Same for gas. Again, March was the only month where that was not the case. So this product and this strategy, if you've never had a conversation about it, I would, you know, definitely suggest that you explore it, because, as I say, it is the only chance you've got of mitigating going into the winter and fixing a whole load of volume. I thought I'd share this. Again, this is not a particularly large client, but I think this is important for people to understand. So this is a flexible contract. I've not done all of the forward months because it wouldn't fit on the screen, it'd be too small, but this is for the 2 years from October 22. You'll see the consumption column, so that's their monthly consumption profile. The non-commodity monthly average, so that's all the stuff would bluntly you can't do really anything about, so distribution, transmission, taxes, all that stuff. And then today's rate, this was done probably about a week or so ago, so rates are actually slightly higher now. We're touching £600 per megawatt going into the winter. So what you'll see on the today's rate column is costs in the shorter term are higher, so the wholesale cost is higher. You see seasonal variation between winter and summer, and what that means on the right hand column is you'll see fluctuations, and to some degree some severe fluctuations on monthly cost, and certainly the upfront monthly costs, given that winter is now exceptionally high in comparison to the forward months. And if we just look at the pounds and pence of that, so October 22, just the commodity element at today's rate, if you were to buy it, is 71,751, where October 24 is 29,537. And the reason for that is if you were to go out and buy it now on the wholesale market, it's a difference of that's effectively 58.3p, and that's 24p. So you can see the further out we go, the cheaper it is. Finally, before we get on to some Q&A, just some points to be aware of in the murky world of energy brokerage. It genuinely is like the Wild West out there. For any of you who have had to deal with energy contracts in the past, it will not surprise you to know that energy brokers bombard you probably almost hourly at the minute, putting you under immense pressure to sign contracts, and they are effectively calling you from glorified call centres, getting you to do things which are really not in your interest at all. Again, just for some clarity, just so that everybody understands, energy brokers, indeed us, we add a uplift and a margin to the unit rates, which we declare to all of our clients for the work that we're doing. Put simply, the more margin you can put into it, the more you will earn. And there are an awful lot of some fairly large energy brokers earning an awful lot of money by hiding far more commission than businesses are aware of and would willingly pay. and it's definitely buyer beware in this market. And if all you're being presented with is fixed price offers, you've got to sign it. You've got to sign it now. You're not being presented with a more holistic approach of other options. I would just say definitely buyer beware. So I'll stop screen sharing. James, perhaps I'll hand back to you. If there are any questions, perhaps either put your camera on and ask me some, raise your hands, or if we go back to the reactions tab at the top and raise it. And if James, if you want to facilitate that, I'll try and answer as best I can. If it's anything really bespoke, we can always pick it up afterwards. I'm more than happy to do that. So back to you, James, and I'll take any questions.
Real, thanks, Liam. Obviously, there was quite a lot to cover in there. So if anyone has got any specific questions, or if you want to either pop those in the chat, John, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, I'm here with Ian Pettit. Hi, Jim.
Hiya. Hi, guys.
How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a question. It's not necessarily for Liam as such. It's more the examples you gave at the start are very similar to what we've seen. We've already locked in for 2 years, unfortunately, a fixed price, but we didn't really know of the alternatives at that point. But we can't really absorb all of that cost ourselves, so we're going to have to pass that on. It's really what people are doing. Are they raising prices? Are they building in like an energy sort of surcharge, a bit like you see with the freight?
Fuel surcharges on freight and whatever.
It's just really sort of what the members think they're going to do to try and deal with this sort of inflated cost.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just chip in. I know you're asking the people on the course. I mean, I'm having this conversation with clients and new business opportunities every single day, and we're having to help them essentially put justification packs together to help them with the letters that they're sending out to their customers to justify the level of increase that they are. I'd be happy to somehow help you with that, even if you've locked in a fixed contract. The only thing I guess I would say is that my experience is that definitely customers of clients, I mean here, that are now definitely aware of this. They might not like it, but it's definitely probably not the first time they've heard it from their supply chain.
I mean, is there anyone else on the call that's sort of adding an energy surcharge to pass on to customers, or found any other ways? Or no, because we're still quite front end, I guess.
I think what we've seen is some people have, and it genuinely is very rare now that anybody's signing a fixed contract. I know you mentioned, John, that you had, and that's perhaps on the basis that it made it just easier to understand budget over a period of time and maybe justify that to customers. Yeah, no easy answers on that one, I'm afraid.
Okay. Thanks.
I think the next hand that went up was Mark. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, Liam. We our contract, we took out a 4-year contract and it runs out in April 2023. So do we do something now or do we sit tight?
Good question. So my very strong advice to you, I mean, I don't know what your consumption looks like and stuff, but I would strongly suggest that you move to a flexible framework as soon as possible. Now, that is not to say you're going to be buying energy from April now, but you want the framework in place so that when an opportunity presents itself, whoever you're working with to manage that flexible contract, and clearly, I'd be happy to have a conversation about how we could support that, and we can act quickly to buy energy when opportunities present itself. I think you know, if you just go back to the scenario where at the very start where I said, you know, here's an example of some fixed costs, 2 weeks later they're a hell of a lot higher. I think the worst thing that anybody could do now is just wait without a strategy, hoping that fixed contracts are going to be a better option come April. So my advice would be explore a flexible framework now, get the framework in place so that somebody can manage it properly for you, so that you're not at the mercy of having 100% exposure to the market in, say, January, February, March time. I don't think that would be a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, we've got sort of a contract of work that we're looking at, and you know, my customer sort of said, I accept there's going to be increases, just fix them for the next 2 years. And obviously that flexible contract, I can actually see that it's a benefit, but we don't use gas, but the electricity costs are going to fluctuate, aren't they?
Yes.
Per month. So it's quite difficult for me then to price against.
Yeah, I would say if you're in a fairly fortunate position whereby all or the majority of your customers are happy to sign off cost increases now, and they're able to, you know, bear all of that, then you might want to just lock it in if you can genuinely pass all that on to them immediately. If you can't, or there's risk attached to you having to pick up some of that, then I would think more strategically than a traditional fixed contract. Okay,
well, perhaps, yeah, I'll end this, but perhaps we need to have a conversation, you know, at a different time, yeah?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll email everybody after this via, or James can, with my contact details and the slides, and please reach out.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I think there are a few more, James.
Yeah, so let me have a look at my list. Next one I've got is Alan. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I have a quick question. The government seem to be saying very little in assistance for companies, and even to the extent of something that could be quite simple. For instance, officers have to work to a minimum temperature. They could introduce temporary legislation to say some of these working areas could reduce, I don't know, 18 degrees down to 15 degrees. Has anything been mentioned? Have you heard anything on the grapevine that any sensible policies could be introduced to reduce consumption? Because obviously we talk about price, but ultimately if we can reduce consumption, your bills will fall.
Yes. No, there's been no sensible strategy discussions that we are aware of. I think, unfortunately, this is probably falling at the worst political time. No, in short, our short, you know, there's definitely no magic wand. I think the only thing in our view that could help people genuinely survive winter is a temporary VAT reduction to help with cash flow, and a reduction or removal of some of the green taxes and levies that are particularly in electricity. Now, that is not going to solve the problem, and as a percentage of your cost, it's still going to look horrific, but at least it would be some step towards it. But unfortunately there's nothing further than that. But again, if people who can you know, come off grid to some degree, so solar, batteries, you know, people who had just looked at solar previously and decided that the ROI and the payback on it wasn't there, that has definitely swung dramatically now given the price per kWh. So whilst again that isn't going to be a short-term fix, it's not something which is going to help anybody with contracts due now. I think people need to think more long term about, you know, energy is now going to be a huge business cost for the foreseeable.
Okay, obviously, like I say, if you can cut usage, I'm sure Germany are probably looking at solutions of this as we speak. But I say the silence is deafening.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, that lines up with some of the conversations we've been having. Not that Westminster are particularly engaging at the moment, but I think when we get a new government and a new PM in place, you know, these will be some of the early conversations. There was another question that came through, but I will go over to Neil, who's next on my list, if you wanted to unmute yourself.
Hi, morning everybody. We're an SME, and according to British Gas, we consume approximately 30,000 kilowatt hours per annum. Is that suitable for your consortium, Liam, please?
30,000 kWh per annum.
Yeah.
What do you do out of interest?
We manufacture filters, so basically we've got a machine shop, laser cutting, punching.
The reason I asked that is 30,000 kilowatts is very, very, very small. To be honest, some houses probably don't use off that, so that's why I questioned that figure might not quite be right.
Right. Well, we think we've got an issue, but that's not for now. We think we've got 2 meters and we're only getting charged for 1. Okay. So that's far better than anything you can do, I think.
Yeah. I think everyone else is jealous of that situation.
But it's not. No, it's not funny. It needs. The problem needs addressing.
Yeah. I mean, Neil, on that, if at face value you just consume 30,000 kilowatts of electricity, then yes, that's far too small. But if there's a side note and a more complex answer to that, then yes, you may be. And you can say you'll get my details, and if you want to have a chat, I'm more than happy to. But yeah, 30,000 doing what you do definitely can't be right.
No. Okay, thank you.
We had a question. Well, it wasn't really a question. It was a conversation we were having the other day about different tariffs that are coming in, and there was talk of putting them almost on a similar model to that you would get with a mortgage, whereby you kind of get a fixed base rate and then it varies each month. Have you seen many companies that are doing that, or are they just going, no, we'll just vary it as we go through?
No, so a product of that nature does not exist, other than to say you can sort of do that within a flexible framework, really. So if we just go, this isn't necessarily the strategy, but just to talk through how it could work. So let's take a scenario where we purchase 50% of volume required at a fixed rate. So we've gone to market and we've purchased X amount of volume, which is effectively 50% of volume, and the rest, so the other 50%, we would effectively leave to float and take on the day ahead market, and that price would fluctuate. So how that works, every day there's a different price for electricity. At the end of that month, you get a weighted average price of those days within that month, and therefore that 50% would be the variable element. That plus the fixed element would give you a blended final rate that you pay. But again, you can only do that via a flexible framework.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's probably what our larger clients do. I'm talking people here who spend millions of pounds, so they effectively want to build a hedge. So they want some level of security plus some element of being open to the market, given that we're expecting the market to not stay as high as it is forever.
Sure. I'm just having a quick look in the chat. There doesn't seem to be any questions in there. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to raise at this point? As Liam said, we will circulate A, the recording of this, and B, I'll put Liam's contact details on there. Again, if there's another webinar you think we could do, or any other topics specifically you want to cover, be that energy reduction or further on costs, then obviously please let us know at the MTA, and we'd look at putting something else together. But I think, given that there are no other questions, hesitating for 10 seconds in case anything changes. No, we will call an end to it there. Just say a big thank you for everyone for joining us. Thanks very much to Liam for this morning. That's really appreciated. And I expect there to be further conversations from this. We have one more question. Alan.
Yeah, our contract doesn't expire until something like the 9th of December. Will things soften after the 1st of October, where who's asked to do something by then?
Well, the honest answer is that who knows. All I would say for you, 9th of December is really not that far away, given the challenges that we are facing in terms of timescales. As things stand now, the wholesale cost for December is the same as the wholesale cost for October for that winter period, astronomically high across electricity and gas. That's changing clearly every day. I guess if your question is, I've got a 9th of December renewal, should I wait until after the 1st of October? I would suggest that if, again, you'd be far more of a strategic decision to go into a flexible framework sooner rather than later would be my
okay. So it doesn't change the options available. It would probably be better just to do the flexible one, which you presumably taking the future price anyway, aren't you?
Yes. Well,
yes.
Yes,
you're allowing people to time within a reasonable time frame when they purchase the gas and electric. But
so we're making those decisions on if anyone's below 10 million kilowatts, we're making that decision for everybody within that framework, that collective agreement. As I say, our current strategy is to purchase via the day ahead market. So for your example, if that is still our strategy within that, then the day ahead price will be the 8th of December's price for your 9th of December delivery, then the 9th of December for the 10th, and so it rolls on.
Right, okay. Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you all very much for joining us. Again, Liam, thank you very much. We'll circulate this, and as I say, we might look at putting something together in the future that goes a bit further into some of the topics. But for now, thank you all very much, and I wish you all a pleasant day.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.